the same time as there are Israeli hostages getting out of Gaza and being reunited with their families, there are hundreds of terrorist murderers who are being released from prison. Have a look at this clip.
השלב השני של העסקה יצא לדרך. 200 מחבלים שוחררו בשבת האחרונה. 121 מהם נשפטו למאסרי עולם. רובם שוחררו ליהודה ושומרון ולירושלים, חלקם לרצועת עזה, וחלק אחר הוגלה למדינות ערב. בכל רחבי יהודה ושומרון אתמול, מחבלים משתחררים ומפגני כוח של חמאס. יהודה ושומרון נצבעה בירוק, הצבע של חמאס. רבי המרצחים התקבלו בתשואות, כאשר האוטובוס שהוביל אותם הגיע לרמאללה. כמצופה, המחבלים שמשתחררים לא מביעים חרטה על הפשעים שביצעו, ולכל אורך הדרך הם מריעים לגדודי עז א-דין אל-קסאם, הזרוע הצבאית של חמאס. שחרור האסירים מחזק את חמאס. ברחוב הפלסטיני הרוצחים המתועבים האלה הם קדושים. חמאס גם דאגה שישוחררו אסירים מכל הארגונים, כדי לבסס את האהדה אליה בכל הרחוב הפלסטיני.
So as you saw in that clip, 200 terrorists were released just last weekend, many of them with blood on their hands. And as you saw there, many of them are returning to their homes in Judea and Samaria. They're being greeted as heroes. You see throngs in the street cheering for these Hamas terrorists. As we talked about in our video about the Palestinian civil war going on between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, these returning terrorists are bolstering the numbers of Hamas. They are making life more difficult for the Palestinian Authority. But also, as you see in these videos, this hero's welcome that they're being greeted with, the way that everyone is so excited, and Hamas is now viewed as liberators, bringing these people out of prison. Hamas is gaining popularity by freeing the members of other terrorist groups as well. While Hamas looked like they were on the way out, they were getting hammered by the Israelis, these prisoner exchanges are actually strengthening them in the Palestinian street. Does this look like a population that's learned a lesson, that maybe thinks that Hamas is the wrong direction for their community to take? One very serious consequence of this deal, of this hostage/prisoner exchange ceasefire deal, is that it allows for a sense of victory and celebration and liberation by Hamas instead of defeat. But it's not only Hamas that is celebrating the release of these mass murderers. Here's a clip of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas calling a released murderer to congratulate him and welcome him home.
مع الجميع أنا وجميع الأسرى بنحكي لا داعي، يعني لا داعي لأي مشهد من مشاهد الفرح والسرور في حضرة مشهد غياب آلاف من أحبائنا الأكرم منا جميعا. أنا إن شاء الله الجميع بسلم عليك وبتمنى تعملنا بس موعد.
That was Yasser Abu Bakr. Yasser Abu Bakr was responsible for a terrorist attack in March of 2002, in which Avia Malka, a 9-month-old baby, was murdered, as well as a 27-year-old by the name of Yisrael Yichya. Abu Bakr was responsible also a few weeks later for the murder of an Israeli policeman who was trying to prevent a suicide bombing. And of course, Abu Bakr is not the only terrorist who's been released. There's been hundreds of them. We have Wa'el Qassam, who was responsible for the deaths of 35 Israelis also in 2002. He was released. And Ammar al-Ziben, who was responsible for the deaths of 16 Israelis back in 1997. And we have Maji Zaatri, who was responsible for a bombing that killed 23 Israelis, including children and babies. And the list goes on and on and on. Let's be very clear. While we share the joy in the return of the Israeli hostages, a recent study shows that 82% of terrorists who've been released in earlier prisoner exchanges return to terrorism. Not to mention the horror of releasing mass murderers. The lesson of this ceasefire deal, unfortunately, is that taking Israeli hostages actually pays off. As this deal continues to go forward in the coming weeks, Hamas will continue to get stronger, both in terms of personnel and in terms of their popularity. And let's make no mistake about it, Israel is sacrificing the lives of future victims of terror, sacrificing Israeli national security concerns by giving life to Hamas in order to save these hostages. This is a very bitter pill to swallow. The deal's been done. We're moving forward with it, but let's have our eyes wide open. Look at the video footage that I showed you earlier. These Hamas terrorists, these murderers, with the blood of so many innocents on their hands, are returning home to a hero's welcome. They are strengthening Hamas. They are giving them a sense of hope and a sense of life and adding to their leadership, making it more and more difficult to eradicate not only Hamas as an entity, but also as an ideology, at the same time as it's causing tremendous trauma and pain to the Israeli public and sacrificing future security concerns. That's the lay of the land right now, and with hundreds of thousands of Gazans streaming to the northern part of the Gaza Strip, it's going to be even more difficult for the Israelis to resume their war to destroy Hamas. This hostage deal is, again, we rejoice at the return of the hostages, but let's keep our eyes wide open. Hamas is getting stronger by the day.